Good afternoon, team. Jennifer and Craig here from Generate Business and Life Solutions, and we are back for our monthly free lunchtime webinar. Hopefully you are sorted with something to take notes on today for the things that we're going to be going through. So if you don't have something to write in front of you, go ahead and grab something real quick and we'll be good to go. So Craig and I are COVID-19 free as far as we know. I realize we're closer than a meter, so there we go. We're all good over here. How things have changed in the space of a month since we were here with you last time. So hopefully your business is resilient and you're continuing to move forward as much as you possibly can. I know the Dental Council has come out with some recommendations on how you to be practicing and different procedures that you need to do, and I'm certain there's things that have come out for the other medical professionals as well. So anyway, moving forward and thinking in the realm of the normal today, what we're going to talk about, and the topic is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And we know all about that over here at Generate and with the clients that we've helped to tackle projects and goals that they've got set for themselves. So moving forward, just a little bit about who we are. We are Generate Business and Life Solutions. We specialize in helping our clients not only with the business financial side of things, but we're also specialists in leadership training and development and communication training and development. So we've got the people side and the number side. So it's quite a good combination. Now, Craig, you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Chartered accountant. I've been in the industry for 25 years. Got plenty of clients over that time and really focusing in the last period of time and helping them achieve not just their business goals, but their life goals, because one doesn't work without the other. So that's why we're here.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. I am Jennifer Myers. I'm originally from the States, but I've been here in New Zealand for the last almost 10 years. And my mission in life is to help as many people as I possibly can to have a better business and a better life. So doing what I do every day, which is coaching, training, and going out to speak at events, which there's not going to be very many here in the near future, but that's what I do. And that really makes me happy because I get to help people to step up and to be better with the things that they've got going on. So that's exciting for me. So these webinars, we've been doing these, I think, since November last year, monthly.
Yeah, it's been such a busy couple of weeks with everything going on. I mean, as you know, I was meant to be on a flight tonight to a John Axel conference and has been postponed. So I was meant to be at a meeting in Wellington yesterday, and that got moved to a Zoom meeting. So you just got to be flexible today with what's going on.
There you go. So we're here, we're on the webinar, we're here to support you and to bring you some good information. So, and we're going to keep doing these moving forward. So I'll share with you at the end of the session what the next topics are that are coming up for the next 3 months. So what do we do here at Generate Business and Life Solutions? We really work with you to help you sort out where it is you want to go in your practice. What do you want it to look like? What's the plan, that big picture plan? We next then help you to put plans in place to ensure that the goals don't just remain dreams, that they actually get put into action. You've got some concrete steps behind them, which we're going to be talking about today. We work with you on growth. How do you ensure consistent, profitable growth? It can be a challenge, and it looks different in every practice. It could be patient numbers, it could be profitability, just depends on what your goals are as to what growth looks like for you. But we partner with you in that sense to help you put a plan in place to grow in a way that makes sense. And exit, when it's time to do something different, step away from the office, step away from the chair, whatever that looks like. We can help you through that as well. So really from soup to nuts, from the vision to what is the next thing on your life list, that's what we do for you.
If you've done the first 3 things well, the exit, you're going to get a better payout.
Absolutely. So you have 1, 2, 3 and ticked off. Exit looks even better. How do we do that? We build relationships with our clients. We really walk alongside you on a personal level to help you with your business performance and how your business affects your life, right? To make sure that you're in a good space in both areas.
I think, Jennifer, you probably need to change that motive there and have us waving at each other, because it's probably not COVID.
Handshaking isn't cool anymore, is it? Good point, Craig. Through education, we provide targeted, customized training for you and your team not only in little situations like this where we've got these little free lunchtime webinars that are quick and fast and we kind of get you in and out with something helpful, but we can actually come to you to help deliver training for your team customized to your situation. And we've got heaps of resources available on our website through the emails that we send out on a regular basis and through the things that we share here in the webinars. So we're here to support you. It is all about you.
It's good to point out too, Jennifer, in the same way we're doing these webinars, they're technology-based. We can train technology-based as well. With today's current environment, we've got to be flexible, and we certainly have set ourselves up that way.
I would think that, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how Generate is an early adopter when it comes to technology and ways to do business where we don't have to actually be in the same room. So it makes things like this really easy, and we can support you not only in person but remotely, which is great. So why us? There you go. We're here in New Zealand. We're New Zealand-based professionals serving New Zealand professionals. We support you with both sides of the business, as I talked about earlier, the business side, the people side. We are certified members of the International John Maxwell team, which means that we've gone out of our way, time and money-wise, to attain additional certifications around leadership and communication training. We've got a solution for every budget, right? We're big enough to have a team of experts in things like marketing, leadership, human resources, health and safety, investing as part of our extended team, but we're small enough to customize what we do to suit what you need. Yeah, and we can come to you, or we can do something like this. So there's no need for you to travel. All right, so diving into today, what are we going to look like today? We're going to cover off, because today's all about planning, because last month's webinar was all around setting your strategy for the year or your goals for the year. So today is around putting some specific action steps behind those goals. So we're going to help you break down your goals into chunks. We're going to look at delegation. We're going to talk about accountability and measurement, and provide what I call timeless time management tips, right? There's nothing new with time management. It's one of those things that sometimes we just need to be reminded how to be a bit more efficient with our time, and that makes all the difference. So we're going to run through some of that today. I'll share with you what's coming up over the next few months and how you can get in touch with us if you have any questions. Good?
Yeah,
ready?
Good.
Sweet. So kind of how these things run. If you haven't been on one of these before, we have a conversation, which ends up being helpful. So I'll put a point out. We'll talk about it a little bit. I'll ask Craig what his experience around it is from his perspective. And yeah, they end up being hopefully quite helpful. So hopefully you'll take away something useful today.
And we have normally we've always kept these under an hour. I think if we can get them through quicker today, we know that especially in your industry, there's a lot happening and you've got focuses elsewhere. So we'll jam as much as we can into a shorter time frame so that you can grab it while you're doing everything else.
Yes, we do call these the lunch hour webinars, but often we're done in about 40-45 minutes. So that's the plan. All right, here we dive in. Craig, you know that I'm just a little bit goofy and I have a sense of humor that is just a little bit wacky. I love this picture.
I mean, it reminds me of your family.
You've met my family now.
There's only 3 of you, and that's why I thought maybe you'd put it up.
Yeah, so yeah, we're back now.
So which one's Josh?
Josh, he's the one over here. Yeah.
Oh, cool. And Erin?
She's the one off to the side going, I don't know what you guys are doing. You're just weird.
And so you're the one.
I'm the one in the middle.
Taking
yes.
center stage.
Taking center stage. So no, my sense of humor is such that this picture just kills me because we're not really talking about breaking it down, right? These bats look like they're dancing. When you flip a picture of a bat upside down, it looks like it's dancing. So anyway, it gives me a chuckle when I look at it every time. But we're talking about really chunking your activities, your goals down into what we like to call our proprietary 120-day planner. So the Generate 120-day planner starts out this way. I'm going to kind of walk through it with you and show you the little snippets of it so that we can take you from big picture idea down through what do I need to do this week to make this happen. So that's going to be the process, and I'll show you little snippets of the planner. All right, so you really want to state what your goal is specifically. We talked last time about setting goals that are specific and measurable. We're not necessarily going the whole SMART route, but we're going specific and measurable because those are probably the most important bits of that.
Oh, if you're not doing either of those, then it's what are you doing?
You can't measure where you're going. No. You don't know if you're on track. And why do you think it's important for us to identify why the goal is important to the practice or to the business?
Because if you don't identify where the goal sits in your whole overall plan, then it might just be a waste of time. You need to make sure that whatever your time is spent wisely. And so identify them and then rank them and work on the ones that will give you the best return, best dollar buck return.
Best bang for your buck.
Excellent.
There you go. So that old phrase is so true. You want to make sure that when you're putting something in front of your team, you're asking them to do something with you and for you to accomplish a goal. Is it really going to give you the return you want? And is it supporting the overall direction of where you want the practice to go? So if you look at the first little section of the 120-day planner, we give you a space to say, clearly state your goal. Is it specific? So do a self-check. Is it measurable? Cool. Explain, right? If it's specific, why is it specific? So just really to get it clear in your own head and to share that with your team, break it down. Why is achieving this goal important to the practice? The next bit that we need to cover is to go from the really big picture, which is that big goal, down to, if we're looking at 120 days, right, to work on something and to take a chunk, either a chunk of a really big goal or to accomplish a slightly smaller goal in a space of 120 days, what does that look like? We want to set monthly KPIs or milestones. So the easiest way to break down 120 days or 4 months is into 4 quarters. So if we say, sweet, first quarter, first 30 days, what do we want to have accomplished in the first 30 days toward reaching our big goal? Or if it's a chunk of a bigger goal, how do we break that down into 30-day segments? So what do we want to accomplish? Quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, and getting up to the end of the 120 days.
And for those that don't know what KPI stands for, Key Performance Indicator. It's one of those languages that we get so used to that we'll throw it out there and sometimes forget that people haven't come across it.
Brilliant. So in the worksheet that we can send to you, if you do want us to send you the actual physical worksheet to do this for yourself, there is an explanation in there about that. I just forgot about that. Very good, Craig. Good catch. So yes, KPIs, ways to measure your progress, something specific. The next step that you want to do as we go through this break it down process is to break it into weekly achievements. So we got, okay, sweet. I've got my monthly goals sorted. Those can still be pretty big things or relatively vague-ish things. So again, it's helping you to break down into specific achievements. So if we say, all right, here's the big goal here in the top section, what do I need to do week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4 to reach my 30-day measurement, right? The measuring stick. What do I need to do to reach that? Now, when we think about breaking things down into weekly goals, Craig, A, do you think that that's realistic? And B, do you think it's useful?
Realistic, sometimes no. Useful, always. So what I mean when I say that is that sometimes your goal won't necessarily need to be broken down into a weekly step because it's something that will just float over the month, if that makes sense. It's something that you start on the first day of the month, and it might be, for example, capturing the number of people who walk in your door. So you're not going to go step 2, step 3, step 4. You'll just have a total at the end of the month. Okay. But it comes back to something I've always said: what you measure, you can manage. So you've just got to work out from your perspective what data you're gathering, what your measurement stick is going to be, so that you measure it. But you also don't want to take so much time gathering it that it becomes such a chore, because it won't happen. So that's why having somebody alongside you when you walk through this, it's good, because they can sort of give you a bit of guidance and that you've gone a bit too far.
Yes. And interestingly enough, when I've walked clients through this process, what I find is it's very difficult to get specific things down into that weekly section. I think people don't think deeply enough really about what they want to accomplish. Not that you have to spend, as Craig said, hours and hours creating this plan, but just push yourself that little bit further to say, all right, if I've got a goal of getting 100 new patients into my practice over the 120 days, then that looks like 25 patients per month. Cool. 25 patients per month breaks down into about 6 and a bit people or patients per week. So that's, again, something that is very specific, and I'm using a really simple example in order to break this down for you. But when we think about getting to those points and evaluating where you are at those 30-day and those weekly checkpoints, something to think about when you get to those endpoints is to kind of have a bit of reflection and say, have we achieved the KPI for this week or this month? Another question you want to think about when you're thinking about that is, If yes, sweet. Make sure you praise everyone who was involved in you achieving that, because people need praise along the way. It's very important. Don't wait till the end of the project, right? And if not, identify what got in the way and see if you can find ways to mitigate what happened for the following, segment, the following period, or the following 30 days. If it isn't able to be something that you can mitigate, then you got to look at reconfiguring the goal, right? And reconfiguring those next steps. Otherwise, you're just going to be behind.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the old elephant one bite at a time scenario. In the same way that we're pulling our goals down into something smaller, we want to do a measuring into some smaller blocks as well. So that if you get behind on week 1, it's not as big a deal to change or do something different from life comes and hits us. We suddenly have coronavirus, but all these other things happening. So you can decide to put it on hold, and it doesn't become a big issue when you get the end of the month and go, gee, we didn't do anything and you've lost a month. At least doing it weekly, you are bringing it down into a position where you're managing in small bites, and the results are being dealt with in small bites.
Cool. So, and the key there is to keep, for me, and for many different styles, is to kind of keep the focus and keep you motivated moving forward. So if you've got something where you can tick off little wins in your big goal achievement project, if those little wins help to build that motivation and kind of keep things rolling, don't they? There's a whole thing in one of the leadership training seminars that we do around is motivation or mojo. Does it cause success, or does success build the mojo and the motivation? And it's one of those chicken and egg things. So once we hit that segment where we've got the weekly goal set, then you can choose to break it down even further into daily tasks and duties. So this really becomes that action plan for the team. Sweet. What needs to happen this week? If you can get this specific, sometimes people can. It just depends on what your goal is and how you're set up. Who's going to do it and by when? So you can break this down into itty bitty chunks if you choose to. You can leave it at the monthly, you can leave it at the weekly. It's a tool for you to use and abuse, but it gives you something to follow to help you put some action and some specifics behind your goal.
Yeah, just remember too, don't just go, oh, there's 25, we want this month, so we're going to divide it and get 6 points, 2, whatever it might come out to be. Because the first 2 weeks, you're probably going to get 0. And so if you set 6, and then 6, and end up with 0 after 2 weeks, you're going to be quite despondent. When realistically, your tasks for the first 2 weeks is putting the platform in place to bring them in. So the in 2 weeks of the month might be 12 and 12.
Exactly.
So that's how you've just got to be thinking about the plan. Do it in such a way that you get wins quickly, because it keeps people motivated, but be realistic.
That's a really good point, because you'll have activities on these daily activities. These are going to be great. Get some more social media going, get a campaign out, and that's not going to immediately result in people coming through the door. So being realistic when you're setting those weekly goals is important. So maybe when you break that 100 new patients in 120 days down into your 4 quarters to begin with, you might say, you know what, in quarter 1, we're going to get 10, or we're going to get 5, based on the fact that most of that quarter is going to be spent marketing and putting the message out to find those people, or putting a system in place to get those people. And the lion's share of them will then come in those last 3. Yep.
And it's also good to actually do it with a minimum of 2 people, because you've got 2 sets of eyes, 2 sets of ears, 2 mouths to work together to get a result that makes sense to the team. Whereas you do it yourself, you can be quite focused and miss out on that big view that you need.
I think when people work on achieving something, they overestimate what they can achieve in the short term.
Oh, definitely.
And they underestimate what they can achieve in the long term. Yeah. All right. So that's that. We can help you interpret that resource for your situation. Just reach out to us and ask. We are at the end of that email every minute of every working minute of every day. So if you have any questions, just reach out. We're happy to send this to you so you can use it, and happy to walk you through it. Sweet. Next point on being efficient, right, and getting plans and goals completed is learning the art of delegation. It helps teams be more efficient. It helps develop new skills in team members who kind of have that desire to step up. And it gives people a sense of achievement and removes some stress, right? Ideally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I can hear everyone saying, yeah, right. When I delegate, I am more stressed than if I don't. Well, I think the problem is you've got a short-term focus, not a long-term focus.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we know what often happens is the result that you get is something doesn't come back correctly, it doesn't come back at all, and it ends up kind of either just kind of floating off into the atmosphere and you lose track of it, or it ends up back in your lap. So, yeah.
There's actually an art to delegating.
There is an art to delegating.
Yeah. And most people don't know. Most people think delegating is dropping a pile of papers and someone's saying do it.
That's abdication. That's abdicating, that's not delegating, right? So we need to ask a few crucial questions on the front end of this process, and then we need to do one key step at the end, and we're going to go through this really quickly. All right, first one, figure out the right person to delegate to, right? Do they have the correct skill set, and do they have capacity? That's a big one. How have you seen this play out in Generate when you delegate to someone who A, doesn't either have the correct skill set or is already overloaded?
Well, it's going to bounce back pretty quick. I mean, it's straightforward enough. But I think sometimes you can do the delegation thinking you've got it right, but it's going through the delegation process you realise that you didn't. And that's okay, because at least you're starting. You'll never move forward if you hold on to everything yourself. So you've got to remember that. And it may be you've got to find somebody else or create space for that person. So it's about saying, well, if I'm delegating to you, you need to delegate to somebody else and actually work a process for them.
Yeah. So make sure you've got the right person in the right spot. ID the resources they're going to need. Sometimes when you drop something in someone's lap, they are not prepared to do what you're asking them to do. They may not have a login to a particular piece of software. They may not have, the ability to scan documents, whatever it might be for you in your project. Make sure they've got what they're going to need, and allow them, talk about it with the person and say, I think this is what you're going to need to do this. Tell me what you think you're going to need.
And good delegation will invariably take more time at the front end, and you gain the benefit of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sometimes that's what keeps people from delegating, is they're going to like, oh my gosh, it's going to take so long, I might as well just do it myself. Yeah, so you got to get over that.
And not always do it themselves.
Yes, yeah, so it's changing the mindset. All right, show and tell. Now, show and tell is obviously showing, or not just telling someone what you want them to do, but showing them as well. I think many people learn in different ways. Many people like to be shown a process instead of just being told, because we only retain a very small portion of what we hear, isn't it? Yeah. So depending on how much we hear and take in, that could really affect the outcome, unless you go that extra mile and say, sweet, let's do this together. Let me show you how to do this. And this is how I want it. So being clear. The last bit of this is follow up and feedback. So this helps those projects not to float off into the ether, but you've actually put a deadline on something, ideally if you can, and you follow up with a person. Tell them how they did. If it wasn't great, tell them so, but work through how they can do it better next time and kind of what the downfall was. If they did a great job, praise them.
And just be cautious in terms of, if you're looking at widening your work space in terms of what you want to do, don't dump all the crap jobs onto the next person, because that'll demoralize them.
Yep.
It's got to be a mix of jobs that they see benefit, that you're encouraging them, you're growing them in what they're doing, but also there will be some crap jobs in that list. But yeah, it's managing the delegation at the same time. And the balance between the stuff they're going to find interesting and fun and the stuff that really nobody likes to do, but somebody's got to do it. And part of that comes back to knowing your team's personality styles as well, which feeds into the disc work that we do. Yeah. Yep. I mean, there's no point giving me stuff that Jennifer's fantastic at, or vice versa. I'm the more detailed person, and Jennifer is more the party person. So I'll send her to the parties, and I'll do the number crunch.
There you go. So yeah, if you try to shove us into different tasks, they're not going to get done well, and we're not going to enjoy them. So know your team, right? And if you need help with that, ask. Sweet. So how do you make sure that the team, actually the people you're putting in charge of the steps of your project plan, your action plan, are doing what they're supposed to be doing? This is probably the hardest bit of the equation to nail. People are afraid to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
You want to speak to that just a little bit?
It's one of the things that we've spent a lot of time doing. We're a small business. We treat ourselves as a family business, and as you know, with family, not so much family businesses, there's good days and there's bad days. People don't like to be critical, and sometimes they see it holding people accountable as being critical. So you've got to design a method or a process, I think, to allow people to be critical in a positive way, so that people are then held accountable. And that depends on your makeup of your team as how that works. So for us, for example, we have in our room a bottle of vanilla essence. Which
I'll explain that really quickly. The vanilla essence, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg have been scientifically proven, the smells, to calm you down and put you in a calm space. So
yeah. So if you're the one that needs to be critical, you would take a sniff of the vanilla essence if you're into that and calm yourself down. But the person who you're being critical with will see the vanilla essence in your hand and go, okay, this is not a personal attack. This is about something we've agreed as a team to be held accountable, and the bottle itself is a visual to remind people that that's what's happened.
That this is going to be a serious conversation, but that it's not personal. It's totally based on what needs to get done. Cool. Thanks for that. So yeah, accountability could be a little sticky bit of the puzzle, but I think if you've got a team that is open, that has trust within the team, I think you can sort out ways to do this that suit your team. I know the vanilla bottle might seem a little strange, but it works for this team. So whatever it is for you, that's the accountability measure. And you have permission, you're giving yourself and your teammates permission to hold each other accountable to what you said you want to do. All right, things to remember when you're pulling an action plan together. It's a team goal, so plan together. There's this whole idea of the boss bringing things in and saying, we're going to do this, and this is who's going to do this, and this is who's going to do this. Or there's collaborative planning. You've done both. What works better for you?
Depends on the circumstance.
Okay.
I think most people don't like change. Well-known fact. And so if they were left with a choice, nothing would ever change. But things have to change. So sometimes it has to be management directed, but you don't actually put the plan 100% in place until there's input. Now the input can effectively be, thank you, you've looked at it, you've listened, but no, we're still going to do it, okay? Because we see a greater benefit in the future. And while there might be some grumbles in the first instance, generally, when you get to that point that the management can see, they've got caught up with you. And so it's just a matter of timing. And other times it can be, okay, team, we need to do something that needs to come from you. This is what we'd like to achieve. How do you think? Because sometimes they know more than you in terms of what they're doing in their roles. And I think by giving them that lift up, they are effectively going, wow, I'm special.
I get to help make decisions.
I get to help make decisions, and then they actually give some good outcomes.
Absolutely. And something that's really topical with the team right now is the 4-day work week. So something that Generate is going to be trialing is something that's been trialed here in New Zealand a few times, and it's that flexibility, the ability to go to a 4-day work week. So that's a plan that is in the middle of being created and processed in our team right now, which has been really interesting. And that's really dependent upon getting the team's buy-in and their thoughts on how it can look to work best. Clarify expectations up front. This is clarifications around the expected outcome, what each person's expected to achieve or to contribute, to clarify the rewards or the consequences of what happens or doesn't happen. And basically just clarifying everything up front saves a whole lot of headache and miscommunication later on.
Big word in that bullet point, clarify. And I think the way I look at it is perceptions are neither right nor wrong, they just are. If you were to hold up a cup in front of you with the handle towards you, your view of that cup would be quite different to my view looking at you, because there's no handle there. So you've described the cup from your perspective, but the person looking at you doesn't see what you see. And so unless you twirl the cup around and sit so everyone can see what the whole thing looks like, then you will miss it on the clarity, and then your expectations or the actual result of the end will not be what it needs to be.
What you want. Yeah, good. So different perceptions comes back to how we see the world, goes back to personality styles, and yeah, it really plays into a whole lot of different situations here. Discuss those measurements, those KPI checks together. Celebrate or give each other a nudge, right? So do this process together. And set a reward for each 30-day achievement. Don't wait till the end, because it could be a year-long project or a 2-year-long project. That's an awful long time to wait for a little pat on the back for some people. So ensure that you're rewarding the team for those small wins along the way. Cool. So that's project planning. That is breaking it down. That is things to consider when you're consulting with your team on how to get the project or the goal accomplished. So the last bit, part 4 of what we're covering today, is time tips. Now I know you're going to have heard some of these things before, but please stick with me because they're good reminders. And I think a couple of these things are presented in a slightly different way than you may have seen them before. So looking through the things that we're going to cover, I'll list them first and then we'll kind of dive into each one. We're going to look at how to prioritize, manage distractions, clarify expectations, and communicate clearly. So those are the 4 things that we're going to be looking at moving forward. The first one is something that we like to call the achiever matrix. Now, if you look at the little picture on the left, that dates me, right? Because this is the Matrix from the movie The Matrix. But this tool is something that was introduced, I think, by Stephen Covey way back, as a way to increase your efficiency and your effectiveness, right? So how to be more effective with the time that you have. And really, it helps you to identify how to prioritize that long to-do list that is as long as your arm into your big 3 or your big 4, the things that you really need to focus on. So the way it works is, I don't think you might be able to see my mouse on the screen from your side, I'm not sure, but down that left axis, is the importance of any task on the to-do list. And down here on the bottom, this x-axis, this is urgent. So every task on that long to-do list has some element of importance and some element of urgency. Now, if we look at that list and we try to compartmentalize into these different spaces, this is the gold in this process. So when we look at the different quadrants, up on the upper right-hand side, where things are really urgent and really important, this tends to be reactive zone. You've got something that's yelling at you that you have to do now, or else something negative is going to happen. You're generally working in the business, working in the practice, and you could feel a little bit out of control because everything coming at you is determining how your day looks. So this is the quadrant that says, do it now. Those tasks that are yelling at you, that require your special skills, that's why they're important, because you need to do them yourself. Those are things that you just do, right? Get them off your plate, get them out of the way. And some people call this matrix the 4 Ds, and you'll see that as we go through. So that's the do it now quadrant. If you're looking at things that are important, but not very urgent, these are the things that tend to fall by the wayside and get pushed along and pushed along. Oh, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that tomorrow. It tends to be that real good working on proactive activity that all of us as business owners want to be doing more of, but we just can't sort out how to find the time to do it. This is where you feel informed, powerful, in control, on top of the world. This is when you're doing that kind of activity for your business. It feels really good and you feel more relaxed. You need to be in that creative, relaxed space to do this kind of thing. It takes your skill, but it isn't yelling at you. So these are the things that are important to decide when you're going to do them. Book them into your diary. Make a meeting with yourself to get out of your practice for a short period of time. Set something in your diary each week that is your working on time, that you don't focus on other things except the practice, and how you take that forward.
What this matrix doesn't show you is it's designed with all the squares the same size. Reality is that you could probably move that middle point down towards the intersection of the X and Y axes, because your do it now for most people is your biggest quadrant. And it doesn't take much for if you don't decide when, it'll fall into the do it now.
If you procrastinate,
you end up with a going nowhere basically.
Yes, so if you've got proactive activities that you know you need to do, they're really important, but you keep putting them off, they're going to be urgent at some point, and then you're going to have to do them. So why not do what you can to be more in control. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. This bit down here, this is just time-wasting activity. It doesn't work for you, dump it. This is the third D, right? So these activities that are not urgent, not important, take them off the list, right? Maybe at some point they'll have a use in the future, but for now, strike them off. You don't need the extra stress of seeing them sitting there, so get rid of them. They're not adding value. This quadrant that we're going to now, which is urgent but not important, is where you can regain some time, right? By leveraging a couple of different things. These things down here, they're in that reactive space because they're urgent, they're yelling at you, but they're low value activities. You don't have to do them yourself. They're, you know, running to the bank, checking emails, those sorts of things in your business, you know, placing product orders. They're important, but you don't need to do them. So the way that you can handle this quadrant is by delegation. There's that wonderful word that we covered earlier.
A lot of people live in that quadrant.
Yes.
Because they're procrastinators. It's the easy quadrant. Yes, it's urgent, so you can have an excuse as to why you're doing it, but it's not important.
Yes.
And then the important stuff, as I said, that whole bucket above you gets bigger and bigger because you're not dealing with urgent stuff.
So this is an easy space to live down here, but you're not doing what you should be doing as a valuable contributor in your practice, right? Either the owner, the practice manager. There are certain things that you don't need to be doing that you can delegate out to your team using the steps we talked about before to get it more effective.
You've got to remember that you are the one in control. That importance and urgency is your importance and urgency. Don't let somebody else's mismanagement of important and urgent override what you do.
Your lack of planning does not constitute my emergency. Yes. So ensuring that when you're you can either delegate to people. If for some reason you do not have a person to delegate to, you can also leverage systems and templates and process, you know, ways to simplify tasks, right? So create a template, create a system for something so it takes less time. The time that you gain back from this quadrant here by either leveraging people or systems, you can put back into this quadrant right up here, which is proactive, deciding when, working on those really important things that need your attention but aren't screaming at you.
An example that I use to delegate it in a system approach is in your inbox. I don't know what yours is like, but there's stuff coming in all the time. So I have some rules set up for emails coming from various places to go into a folder off the side. I know that generally those ones don't have to be dealt with today, so I can go and look at them in my pleasure, and also can eyeball them all in one go, rather than going in 3 inbox and going, do something.
Deciding with each one.
Because they're all mixed. I'm actually using the Outlook functionality to semi-delegate it.
Cool. So putting it in a space where you're more in control of when that takes your time. Yeah. Good. So team, that's the Achiever Matrix. Tried and tested tool from eons ago. This is just a different way to look at it, potentially, and a different way to talk about it. So how you can use this in your practice is you can write this on a whiteboard. You can make this matrix on a whiteboard, and you can plot different things that need to happen during the day or during the week into the different quadrants on this whiteboard, and work through it with your team so everyone knows what's important and what's urgent today or this week, and you know where everybody's focus is, and they're focusing on the right things. Yes?
Part of that will be your team meetings that you have at least once a week.
Absolutely. Share this with them, work through this. Sweet. Next timeless time tip, manage distractions. There it is. This is how we feel when we're constantly distracted, isn't it? A bit out of control, a bit crazy. Could be. Josh is. I'm married to a clinical psychologist, so yes, he does a bit of artwork to keep himself sane, and some of it does look like this. So managing distractions. What we're going to do today is kind of run through, there are heaps of them, but we have time only for 5. So we're going to run through the top most prevalent distractions really quick and talk about ways you can mitigate them. So the top 5: shifting priorities, interruptions, procrastination, poor use of system, and meetings. So let's work through these one by one. Shifting priorities. We just talked about how you can prioritize what's important and what needs to happen with each team member using that 4D quadrant, right, the Achiever Matrix. My the tip for managing shifting priorities, right? When something lands in your lap and takes you away from the important thing that you were dealing with, how do you know where you need to go back to? By setting, what are my big 3 for the day? What are my non-negotiables that I really need to do today? And come back to those.
And other people might call it a to-do list.
Mm-hmm. A short one. Yep. Don't do the long one because it's a bit overwhelming. You've got a big one. You just set it off to the side every day. What are my top 3? What are these 3 things I want to make sure I knock out today before I move on to anything else? So if you've got those identified, you'll know immediately what to go back to if you get drawn away. The second one is interruptions. Now this can look like what? Emails, phone calls.
Emails and how the rugby went in the weekend.
Your co-workers.
How the cricket went in the weekend, and how the daughter's new dress looks, and
Mm-hmm.
You see, I'm not an I type personality.
So Craig is a task-oriented person, right? So we sit down and we have tea at the office, and yes, we have divided tea time into social time and okay, what do we need to cover off for the business really quickly, and then we're back into work. So it kind of keeps everybody happy. So this looks like anything that kind of takes you off task and off focus is an interruption. And we know that it takes 40% longer to complete a task once you've been interrupted than it would otherwise. So these interruptions can be massive unless you step up and set some boundaries, right? So this could look like your coworkers walking around with a cup of coffee on a quick little break, going, Craig, what'd you do last weekend? But you're sitting there reading a report and I step into your office doorway and go, hey, Craig, what are you doing? I'm working. So it's sorting out how to diplomatically redirect people.
So we had what's called closed doors. So we had a sign that person put on the door saying my door is closed today, because we generally have an open door policy. We know when we see the sign that there's something that they have to do urgently. Generally, they can't have it for the whole day. They just have it for a period of the day so they can just focus, turn their phone off and just get work done that's needed.
Because we know that when you can have some uninterrupted focus time, you get so much more done in that time period because you know it's limited than you do in an entire day sometimes, because stuff just kind of stretches out to fit the time that you give it. So if you limit, give yourself some focus space, whether it's 15 minutes, half an hour, an hour, kind of sometimes seems like a luxury to some people, but yeah, depending on your work situation, how your office is set up, you may not have a private space in your practice, that's okay. Communicate with your team members and retrain them how to deal with you when you're focused on accomplishing something. We've trained people how to deal with us up until this point in our lives, so we can retrain it. It's under our control. So don't give away your power to your team to direct your day, right? Make sure that you retain some of that power and you set boundaries with your clients and with your team. Yeah. All right. Now, this is another little funny thing I found about procrastination. Procrastination is a huge time waster because that's where you can spend time on the dump it activities when you're procrastinating, those not important, not urgent, and you can spend time in those urgent but not really important, right? So that's kind of procrastinating on the big important stuff that you need to do. So this little graphic's just kind of funny. Level of procrastination induced anxiety, sweet. I'm a month out, not at all worried. And then things kind of change exponentially the closer I get to when the deadline is due. You know, sweet, a week out, I'm a little bit paralyzed and I'm curling up in the corner crying because I don't know what I'm going to do to get this done. And one day out, I've totally lost it. Look, I made a chart, right? I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just gone. So procrastination sometimes coordinates or comes along with people who are perfectionists. Would you say that's probably kind of true?
Very much so. Yeah.
So one tip for you here on this one, if you tend to procrastinate, you most likely exhibit some sort of perfectionism in your personality style. If that's true, write this phrase down. Don't let perfect stand in the way of better. Just do it, right? Put it out. You can always change it once you've accomplished something, you've written something. It does not need to be, rarely does something ever need to be perfect for you to do it and move on.
I think it's the classic that we are all connected to that do that well are software companies. If they waited for it to be perfect, we would have no software to deal with.
Yes.
So they get it out enough to do the job to a certain point, but they keep working on it and working on it and keep making it better as they go. Sometimes that can be frustrating, but generally, that's the way they work.
Bug fixes and constant updates, yes. All right, so now when we talk about poor use of systems, that was that fourth distraction. The real crux of that sentence, the important word in that sentence is use. So a few questions to ask yourself and your team if a system isn't working. All right, so we pulled a couple of these together. Number one, do we need it? Sometimes teams, bosses, management create systems that really don't need to be created, or implement something that really is unnecessary or complicates things. So A, is it needed? Two, has everyone been trained how to use it properly? The biggest thing that I think we find when we talk to clients is, yes, they've got a system in place. Yes, it can be really helpful, but people haven't been trained how to use it properly. So it doesn't get used. People are scared of it because they don't understand. Number three, am I as a leader using it as it's meant to be, oops, typo, as it's meant to be used?
I thought that would be that page.
Detail, he got it then, I just got it. So am I being the example for my team? And I know this is something that Craig is really good at within Generate. You're early adopters of software, you've got all sorts of automated systems in place, and you're one of the people that comes to the team meetings and says, oh, I just use this and I figured out a great way to get around this or to use it effectively.
Yeah, you've got to be careful where team members will fall into the trap of keeping doing it the way they're used to doing it, regardless of whatever system put in place. So you've got to make it easy for them to change with the system, so it isn't a fallback on the historical.
Yes, they will fall back into comfort zone very quickly unless you're constantly reminding them to use it and creating, taking away the safety blanket, right, or safety net sometimes. Yeah, taking away the security blanket, that's the word I was looking for. What roadblocks are keeping it from being implemented? Is there a security blanket system that people are falling back on? And if it just wasn't there, they'd be forced to use the new thing. Are there people who are so resistant to change that they're, spreading dissatisfaction and keeping things from being? And that's a one-to-one conversation, a counseling conversation. What now, right? If you've gone through all of those questions, what now? Should we keep it and adjust it to adapt? Should we ditch it completely because it isn't needed? Or should we ditch it and replace it with something better? So it's just a way to kind of get you thinking if something isn't working, and it could be a process, a system, a piece of software, doesn't matter what it is, really look critically at it and say, is this working and why isn't it working if it's not helping us to be efficient?
And then to bear in mind when you're dealing with this, a constant we see will be a phrase something along the lines of, Susan just won't do this thing properly. And a phrase that I use to deal to that is what in the system is allowing that to happen. Because if the person is not using it the way you think it should be used, and it's constant, then move it away from the person and bring it back to the system. And it just makes it easier to deal to. So you sort of go through this in a sort of rotating system.
Yep. So always, rarely, when you think about this, rarely is it a person's fault that a system falls down. It's usually a flaw in the system or a flaw in communication. Yep. Cool. So the last distraction that we're going to talk about are meetings. How often do you have meetings in your practice? You should be having them about once a week, but they should be short and sharp and targeted, right? With an agenda, a set time frame, and ensuring that you know what you want to accomplish from getting your team together. Getting your team together takes them away from other things that they could be doing that give a good return in the practice. So you need to make sure that those precious minutes that you set aside for meetings are productive. Yes. And we've changed how you do things in Generate many times over the years.
Yeah, we've tweaked it. We used to have a stand-up meeting once a day. Everyone would know what everyone else is doing, so they could help each other out. We now tie it into morning and afternoon tea. So we have a segment of 10 to 15 minutes at morning and afternoon where if anything's going on, everyone knows about it, so there's input and it just keeps things flowing.
Yep. And that has worked pretty well, and that's stuck. Yeah. Versus the 2-hour-long team meeting once a week, which half of it is fluff and isn't really needed. So yeah, how do you make that time productive? Next time, in the next session that we do next month, a piece of what we're going to be talking about, or maybe it's May, is how to run an effective meeting. So we'll give you those tips. Sweet. So a couple of the tips: set clear expectations, and this goes back to clarifying expectations, not just when you're in the middle of a project or an action plan. Setting clear expectations in your practice around everything, people's roles, timing, behavior, how you treat your patients, all of that is really important to outline up front. Now, communicating effectively. DISC. Interesting. Everybody's got a different set of glasses that they view the world through, or lenses, and that affects how they communicate, how they execute when you ask them to do things, how they take feedback and criticism, and just everything flows from people's inherent personality style. So if you can understand within the team who is naturally inclined to behave in which way, and how can I adjust how I communicate with that person, you'll save time. You'll head off some miscommunication. You'll head off some drama. You'll be able to communicate more efficiently.
Yeah.
And you found this.
Oh, definitely. We know every team member what their profile is, and we structure or plan whatever we do around how we're going to get across to them. There's still going to be conflict because people are people. A D personality, you can see they're quite gruff, quite demanding, will always sort of cause grief to someone who's an S, because they're sort of quite people orientated, and they care about the people around them, and so there can be conflict. And you just got to, and it comes down to managing that conflict, because you still need a range of people. You can't, when you have all of the same, that can be just as a big a problem as having the mix.
Yep. Absolutely. So again, that's something that we can help you suss out within your team, is identifying who's what and helping you sort out how to communicate more effectively within your team. And it flows over to your patients as well. You begin to see clues in the people that you interact with that help you to communicate more effectively with your family, with your patients, with your team. Sweet. So we covered this last month, and it's still just as relevant this month. If there are no plans in place, what are you going to get? SSDD. What is SSDD? Same stuff, different day. This is that if you always done what you, if you do what you always do, what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So it's doing things differently, stepping up to not only grow yourself and your abilities as a leader in your practice, but to grow, share the information with your people. I had a woman contact me from a practice in the South Island last month after the session. She said, Jennifer, that was so great. It was the strategy session. This was so great. Can I show the replay of the webinar to my team at our meeting next week? I'm like, sure, go for it. And she came back, and that was just great feedback. So if you want to share these recordings with your team, just reach out to us and ask for the recording. We'll send it to you. You can share it with your team at a training event. Grow your people and grow your practice. So when you're working at optimum levels, your team are on board with you and they're supporting you, then your practice will grow. Cool. So what's coming up next? Thank you for hanging in there to this point. We're almost finished, and it is, oh, we're doing great. It's 12:53. So in April, next month, we're going to be covering off topics around your team. So how to connect better, how to understand those different personality styles. We'll touch and we'll do a little sneak peek of DISC for you, and how to run effective meetings. So everything kind of team-based. In May, we'll talk about growth. How do you get sustainable growth in your business that suits what you want to achieve? Because as I said before, it looks different in every business. Some opportunity for marketing activity in your area. So we'll cover off kind of some of the 4 main pillars of marketing. And we'll look at profitability, how to maintain profitable growth. And in June, we'll talk about resilience. I'm certain this thing isn't going to go away in the next few months that we're dealing with.
Yep.
I'm thinking people are going to be quite tired by June. So we'll talk about resilience, using little micro strategies to keep your sanity in place, how to reframe situations, rewire your brain to kind of maintain that positive mindset and to take care of yourself. So that's what's coming up. FYI, we were going to run a local thing for those of you who are watching from Waikato, Bay of Plenty, near us, within an hour's drive, 45-minute drive. Due to what's happening, we're going to postpone our after-work drinks and nibbles that were planned for this month. I think we'll kind of put that back into play a little bit later this year once things settle down. And that's us. So thank you so much for your attention. This session is recorded. If you'd like the recording, let me know, and we will send it out to you. Have a great day.
Yep, thanks for your time.
Hi.
Jen Myers here. I hope you enjoyed that video and it got you thinking about how to implement that topic into your practice. If you have any questions whatsoever, myself or Craig, we are more than happy to answer questions for you and help you understand how to apply what you've just watched and what you've just heard into your specific practice in your unique situation. So please click the button that says book a meeting, and we are more than happy to spend a few minutes with you going through the information and how you can apply it. So thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.